the Sermon on the Mount, uh, still in chapter 7. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday who, they watch So Care with Stevie Boy, and we were talking about how I don't really have a great explanation for pearls before swines and, that whole thing I've talked about. And he made a great insight when he said, he feels like Jesus was trying to shake people up. In many places, several places in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, "You have heard it said, but I say to you," it's. I'm not sure that Jesus always turns everything upside down, but he certainly gets people's attention. He arrests them in their thinking. I think that's true. I think he intentionally made some things where you just have to scratch your head and ponder. That was a great insight, and I think it helps. One other aspect of the Sermon on the Mount is that, and this helps explain, pardon me, what's got into me? Allergies. Okay, I'll see if I can talk now. Maybe. Well, that's rude, the whole thing. Well, the other aspect, and this relates to the fact that Jesus doesn't seem to have any concern for transitional statements or transitions from one idea to the next to the next. I mean, it's an abrupt kind of march. I think one of the ways to look at the Sermon on the Mount is a little bit like a string of pearls. One pearl, and then another, and then another, and then another. It, it comprises a whole body of a message, but it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have to connect with transitions. This is the way the book of Proverbs is. It's also, I think, the way the book of James is in the New Testament. So, the next pearl on the string comes in verse 13. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But such is small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Well, different ways to look at these gates. And the word picture that Jesus uses is that there's a thoroughfare, a roadway with a gate. Well, that's common in the ancient world. It was certainly common in Israel, where the cities had gates. And some gates were quite wide, other gates not wide. Excuse me. Allergies. One of the reasons why a gate was wide is because lots of people were going to be coming through that gate. Other gates were not wide, they were narrow because not many people were going to come through there. Okay, that's exactly what Jesus is indicating here with a word picture. I'm not sure it's a parable, but it is a word picture. There are two gates. And I think it's possible to look at this gate thing and realize there's not a third gate. There's just two gates. One leads to destruction, one leads to life. Now, I think in our world, a lot of people would like a third one. That is, I'm not in for destruction, but I, I don't, I'm not sure. I don't think I get what you're saying about this life deal. Well, the bottom line is in our culture, we want what we want. We want to be happy. And I'll tell you this, in my experience, there are people that have lined up to get through the wide gate that leads to destruction who are really happy. They love what they get to do, right up until they don't anymore, because it won't work. And some people discover that before they get to the gate. They're just on this wide road. But if you stay on that road, you're going to go through the gate. And at some point on the other side of that gate is destruction. I also know there are a lot of people who are on the narrow road and will go through the narrow gate who have had tremendous suffering in their life. And many things about their life they're not happy things. And yet there's a peace, there's an abiding joy. I mean, and I don't mean ha 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 ha. I'm talking about the deep, abiding joy that comes from what we know about our secure relationship to God through Jesus. Well, I mean, it stands to reason. If there are only these two gates and two roads, you're going to be on one or the other. Now, I grew up in a church culture where the preaching and teaching was mainly to those of us who had already said yes to Jesus, but we were spoken to and taught as though we were on the wide road toward the wide gate. And as a kid, I kind of thought maybe I was on the wrong road. And maybe my destination is that bad because I'm a bad person. Well, I was in my 50s before I was introduced well to the idea of grace. The people, here's why that matters to me. The people on this narrow road who are going to go through the narrow gate are not perfect. They're not sinless. They're people who have shortcomings and failings, and they have brokenness. But because of God's grace, they're going to go through this narrow gate. Because I am a broken person with failings and shortcomings and trying to think of the right word, huge limitations, that doesn't mean I'm on the wide road. Now, I have to be thoughtful about this. I have to be careful even about it. Because it's, how do you get from the narrow road to the wide road? If you're on the narrow road, there's as many ways to get there as there are people, probably. I think most people who have somehow moved from the narrow road to the wide road do that by increments, an erosive slide. Some, I'm sure, have bolted, but that's not the majority case. And now, okay, it's worth me reminding you, I am not a Calvinist. I do not believe that once you're on the narrow road, you're on the narrow road forever. That once you're saved, you're always saved. no matter what. No, I don't get that. But I will say, for the majority of us who have been saved and are being saved, we're on the narrow road and we'll stay on the narrow road, but it's still a matter of choice. Now, is it possible for one on the wide road headed to the wide gate that leads to destruction? Is it possible for a person in that status to somehow move across to the narrow road? Well, of course there is. That's why Jesus came. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is a gate and broad is a road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is a gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Ta-ta, find it. There are a lot of people that are looking for fulfillment and satisfaction in life, but they're looking in the wrong place, right? Thinking of that old, I think it was a country and western song, looking for love in all the wrong places. Well, the world is full of people like that. I'm like that often. Very often, I'm looking for fulfillment from things and stuff and ways that they don't lead to fulfillment. And when I realize that, then what do? You change your direction. Here's a very important principle. I'm grateful for Andy Stanley for writing about this in a very good book. He said, your direction always determines your destination. Here's the thing. For people on the broad road and the wide gate, headed to the wide gate, they're going to have to change their direction to change their destination. Because if they stay on that road, the destination is destruction. It is possible to change your direction. That's what the Bible word repent means. To change your direction. For those of us on the narrow road, we maintain that direction because the destination is life. Okay. Here's one other aspect. For those of us on the narrow road, we have this privilege of calling out to and introducing people on the broad road to the fact, the concept, the idea that you can change your direction. And I can't do it for you, but I'd love to walk with you as you change your direction. I've worked with people who have literally said, I just don't see myself ever being able to change. I can understand that. Yeah, but it's not true. All of us can change our direction so that our destination is the one we long for and desire and dream of and don't believe we can reach. But the change in direction can happen. And it's through the agency of God's grace. I'm not boastful. I don't want to be boastful. But I believe I'm on the narrow road. And the only reason that I stay on the narrow road and I maintain my direction is the grace of God. So today, consider two things. One is, who might you be able to, through the strength of your relationship and the trust that you've established, might you be able to encourage and even plead with to change their direction. Ask God to continue to pour His grace into you so that you can be effective at that. And the other is, it's worth doing daily to think about my direction. Do I need to, even a small change in direction can affect the destination. Maybe I need daily course correction. Okay, that's enough. See you next time. I'm sorry I went over time on So Care with Stevie Boy.